Good afternoon to everybody. How was the experiment? Very good. There were a couple of questions about the projects. The list is full already, and also about the points. So if you do the project together with someone, you also share the points, okay? Because it would not be fair to someone who is doing it alone to get, equal number of points to someone who does it in a couple, with somebody else. So it's shared points. Then the list is pretty much full, right? So I suggested in the beginning of the class, of the course, that if you have some research project that fits into the topic of the course, then you're welcome to present this as a project. Alternatively, I also think what would be interesting is to work with an app that is called Firefox. Yes. It's an app from German University. Everybody can download it, and you can measure all kinds of signals. And for us, perhaps most interesting is to measure acceleration. Okay, so you can measure acceleration. So this is acceleration. So, but why I want to measure this? Because you can do very interesting stuff with it. You can put it on your chest, and you can measure your heartbeat by this. And you can measure your respiration by this. And then you can do some analysis that we will learn today to do a synchronization between the two. And so somebody who is interested in doing such kind of experiment is welcome to do this as another project. You can come after the class or in the break and talk.
What is the name of the app?
It's called Firefox. I will also put it. I will put the link in Lambda, okay, that you can download it. And then you can. It's great. I like this very much. You can do a simple. I recommended this to a friend of mine. She is doing field studies in Africa, and she's trying to get physiological data from the people there, especially women who are pregnant, to get diagnose certain issues. And it's very difficult to get them to a hospital with all the equipment. And I discussed with her that they can use a smartphone and record very simple physiological signals and do some analysis with this. I mean, it's kind of a dream, but if the government gives me a couple of $1 million, I'm willing to do some research on this. So yeah, I think it's great. If somebody wants to work on this, please let me know. Yeah, so today is basically the last theoretical lecture, right? Because next week we will start to prepare ourselves for the lab visits, and we will learn about the labs, the signals that are going to be recorded, and how we are going to analyze them. So enjoy today the last theoretical topic. And it's about networks. Okay, networks in physics, or networks in general, is a topic Baylan is famous for, not only in Israel but worldwide, because we have here a couple of people that are pioneers in network theory. It's Shlomo Havlin, Ruben Cohen, who was his student at the beginning, and there are some other people who do also networks. Okay? But they are the two big names. And networks, basically, from physics, just when you look at solid state physics, silicon oxide has a network structure, or many solid states many materials form a network structure. Last week we talked about percolation. Here we have one. Percolation is also a kind of a network, right? You can use this as a resistor network. We talked about the transition also between conductor and isolator, right? So this is an application of networks, and I want to today at the end of the class to tell you a little bit about physiological networks, because this is also what we are going to work on with the data from the labs. So these are two networks that my PhD student, my former PhD student, Peng, constructed, and here the links that you see are indicative. They indicate coupling between physiological systems, right? So you have here the red nodes, so to say. They are signals that belong to the cardiovascular system, to the heart, obviously, to blood pressure regulation. Then you have here in the middle these two green ones. They are related to oxygen saturation and CO2 saturation. And here these nodes are related to brain functionings. I mean, blood flow in the brain, blood pressure in the brain, and so on. And what you see is when you take a subject, so this is an experiment our collaborators did in Wales, in the UK, and they have a chamber where they can change the oxygen the oxygen of the air, that people are breathing, and under norm oxia, this is the normal how much oxygen we have in the air? 21% about. So you have this kind of interaction that pretty much all of the subjects show, and then you suck out the oxygen and you bring them to a level. This is a level of around 4,000 something meters. So this is when you go to the Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc is the highest peak in Europe, it's in France, in the Alps. And when you go there, you have much less oxygen. When I went there, you go out of the cable car and you want to go up the stairs, and you have to go piano. It's not. It really makes you dizzy. So when you bring these people in this kind of conditions, they show many more connections. So it's like the body has to work harder in order to keep you alive, so to say. And then we distinguish between people who get very sick, they get a headache, and they throw up, and they show even a bigger connection than others who are tolerating this much better. And but here, drawing this kind of links is much more complicated than drawing these links, right? These links is just on-off. But here you really have to prove there's a coupling between the physiological systems. So, yes, so in general, I just told you about networks just have nodes and edges or links. And if you think about it, typical networks are internet, where the computers are the links, the nodes, and the connecting cables are the links. World Wide Web, it's the documents and the links. Social networks, it's people, friends who have connections, right? The connections are the links. Everybody talks about it. And biological networks, you have proteins as, for example, proteins as nodes, and if they have kind of if they interact in any way, then you put a link in between. So this is the general motivation for networks, and a little bit about the history of networks. It started in a town called Kaliningrad. Yes.
About the previous slide.
Yes.
Just I just want to ask, is that, in your opinion, also valid for DNA sequencing?
You can also, yeah, they do also a network representation of DNA sequencing to find that there's a whole field called network medicine, you know, where they try to see certain genes clustering that are related to a disease, you know. Yeah, there's a whole field on this. It's maybe started 10-15 years ago in Boston, and yeah, it's a very interesting topic. And if you are, I mean, for this talk today, or for networks in general, I recommend this online book by Laszlo Barabashi. You find it at networksciencebook.com. We have many examples there, and I took some of the pictures from there, and it is a great book. So if you just want to, it reads also very well. So if you have some spare time and you are interested in this, you are welcome to browse through the book. Good. So network science basically started in the 18th century in Kaliningrad. At this time it was called Königsberg, was part of Germany, and today it's part of Russia. And why everybody is, I mean, here's Poland, here's Lithuania, and here's Russia, so they are not very happy, you know, that you have a part of Russia between the, it's a big issue, and Putin is very happy about this, you know. So, yeah, you can really give it to them. And they are very afraid here. I have a chômeur in my building. He has somewhere, he comes from an area that is 2 kilometers from the border. And he's all the time telling me how much they are afraid from the Russians, and it's a big story. And he doesn't want to go back there, but his family is there. Okay. So why Königsberg? Because in Königsberg there was a scientific society, and they didn't have social media and YouTube, so they had to think about intellectual problems to solve, you know, not to get too bored. And one came up with the question, with the following question: can one walk across the 7 bridges in Königsberg? There were 7 bridges. You see them, right? You walk on this island, and you could go to other sides of the parts of the town. And the question was, can you walk across these bridges and never cross the same one twice? Okay, this was the question they were worried about at this time. And there was one guy that everybody of you know, everybody of you knows, that was also in Königsberg at this time. It was our friend Leonhard Euler, and he said no. Okay, he said no. This was in 1736. He was also heavily developing at this time the field of differential equations and other things, many contributions. And what he did was the first graph. Okay, so networks originally comes from graph theory, and Euler is basically the pioneer of graph theory, because he started to simplify problems by just reducing it to the important things. The important things are the points, right, in Königsberg, and the bridges. These are the important things. You don't care about anything else. And he said no, it's not possible to do this. Why? Because if you would have such a path, okay, so if you would have such a continuous path across all bridges, then it can only have one starting and one end point, obviously, right? Nobody argues against this. So nodes, these are the nodes, who are start or end point have an odd number of links. Odd is isoglete, okay? Because you have to start or end there, right? So if you have nodes with an odd number of links must be either the starting or the end point of the journey. And when you look now at this network, you see D has 3 odd number of links. C also 3, A 5, right? And B 3. So you have more than 2 nodes that have an odd number of links. So therefore, you cannot go on such a journey, and you don't. So if you have a graph with more than 2 nodes with an odd number of links, such path cannot exist. So we just solved this now in 5 minutes. I don't know how long it took Euler, but all the others were thinking quite heavily about this. So we would make good companions to this scientific society nowadays. I mean, at this time, not nowadays. Nowadays, people are worried about other things. Good. So this was the first, so to say, insight into networks and the beginning of graph theory. So nowadays we have more sophisticated things, right? And we have the internet, for example, that shows you all these fancy connections. Here's a global internet map. You have here the Europe and how Europe is connected to North America, and and this is here China and Singapore. Singapore, look how big it is. Singapore is bigger than Tokyo. We have more bigger routers than Tokyo. I was surprised about this. You have here, this was in the media the other day, the cable from Helsinki to Frankfurt. It was, it goes through the Baltic Sea, and it was cut. And then they said this was Putin. Putin said, no, it was not me. Then they said it was the Chinese. There was also a Chinese ship going there. So, but they said we also. So in the end, it was nobody, but the cable was cut, and there was reduced traffic in Germany from Helsinki to Frankfurt, and people could not watch as well Netflix. But I think meanwhile they fixed it. So you see here our world, how it is connected, and how easy it is to kind of present this in this network framework. Okay. So this is the internet. You can also look at a network of the World Wide Web. World Wide Web is websites, right? Websites you have here. So this is, for example, a website, and the website has many, or a domain basically, and on the domain you have many websites, so to say. And the difference, what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? I mean, the internet are the computers with the cables, and the World Wide Web are the websites with links, but what is the difference in terms of physics, maybe? In terms of
what is it? What I'm looking at?
So you're looking at, for example, you go to the website of the university, okay, to Barilan, and then you have there links to all the departments. Okay, so these are the websites of the departments, and okay, the departments also have links to all the websites of the researchers, so this could be even more complicated, but this is a domain, okay, and from the domain links to websites, basically. This is what you see here.
And the red ones are the basic domains of the...
Oh, good question. I think the red ones were hubs that were, I don't remember, okay, because this one is not, this one is a hub, and this one also, but I don't remember what this one was. I have to look at the paper. Good question, I forgot. Yeah, so what's the difference to the internet? In the internet you don't have a direction, right? You have there is a flow of data from Frankfurt to Helsinki and back. No direction, usually it's both ways. But when you look at websites, you have a direction usually, the link. So you have a link that points somewhere, and often it's asymmetric and there's no link back, right? So if you, for example, go to, what would be a good example? You go to my website, and I have a link to Ynet, okay? But Ynet doesn't have a link to my website. I don't know why. Yet. Thank you very much. Yeah. So there's some asymmetry, right? Actually, I don't have a link to that. I pretty much didn't update my website for a long time.
So it's one.
Voila.
It's one.
So in directional cases, you expect the regulation to be more complex, increasing of the complexity of the structure that you're looking at?
Yeah, you can say this. It's more complex, and it's also the path. If you want to go from one node to another, is more complicated because you cannot go back, right? You have to find. This is actually a calculation problem, whereas when you have the internet, it's not so much a calculation problem because you have it's simple, right? You can go back and forth. Yeah.
But are they really all of them connected to one another? Are there not any standalone websites out there?
Yeah, you have also standalone websites.
Because here they're all connected. So.
Yeah, because this is only. I have to look it up. It is only of a particular. I don't know if it's U.S. East Coast or also pretty old. So it's. You also have standalone that you just have a link that goes there. For example, Google finds it when you do a search, and then you are on this website, and from there you don't go out, basically. So this is sometimes when you are stuck with some commercial, right, and you don't get out. It's very similar to this. So, and they don't want you to get out, you know. Only when you click on buy, then you get out. Yeah. So. Just an example. Then links are directed, and also very interesting because I like to eat and to cook. There was a nice paper in Scientific Reports by Barabashi about flavor network. Okay, so what you see here are the different food categories. Fruit, vegetables. Fruit are colored in yellow, right? And you have herbs that are light green, and vegetables in dark green, and meats, here chicken and stuff. And then the links between them are shared components, chemical components. Okay, so I mean it's not very surprising that here are all the mushrooms, right? Mushrooms, they are kind of disconnect. They don't have much in common with other foods. But what was also here? Liver. Okay, this is chicken liver, beef liver, and liver. I don't know. Some liver is pretty separate. But what I found interesting is
it's the pecan dumplings, the hazelnut that are also standard.
the hazelnut and roasted hazelnut is also, and pecan is also separate. But who would have guessed this? Butter and yogurt, okay, they have a link, but cucumber and butter? What is their shared component? I don't know. But chemically, they have some shared component. Not much. You see here, 150 is when it's a strong link, and 50 if it's intermediate, so and 10. So around 10 common ingredients. So that I found interesting. Also, Did you know that there is a strong link between black tea and Jamaica rum? I didn't know this. I knew that when you eat beef, you drink red wine because it's tasty, but they also have a lot of shared components. So it's very enlightening. Chickpeas, hummus, and mana also have a lot of shared components. You can get crazier with this. I like it. I really enjoy it.
It's a nice
This
it's a nice picture. You can do it also with genes, I guess.
Yes,
of different species, and you can identify.
The same guy. So this is what he did in 2011, and afterwards they started network medicine. The same people. I mean, some of the people, and they did this with genes also.
Yeah, it's good.
And then they identified clusters that were responsible for asthma, for example, and nobody knew. They knew maybe one or two of these genes, but then they identified a whole cluster, and then they started to look, in these phenotypes, and they saw, this is really related to asthma. It's very, very interesting. But I don't know enough to tell you more about it, right?
They interpret the relations. I mean, for example, if they say butter and cucumber are related, so they go together good. I mean, or they just show connections.
This is the next slide. So these are just chemical similarities, so to say. So what is, when you do the chemical analysis, what shares chemical similarities, or whatever, molecules or something. But you're pointing now to the next question. What goes good together in a recipe, right? And this they did next, so this was the second part of the paper, that they identified shared components. So for example, coffee and beef has a lot of shared components. And shrimp and lemon, not so much. Okay? And then they went through recipes at different places on Earth. North America, Western European, Latin America, Southern European, and East Asian. Okay? And the funny thing is that in North America, they prefer to eat things that have a lot of shared components. Okay? So French fries and hamburger have, I don't know, maybe. Or here, drink a coffee with your beef. Okay? Make sure that you take halal soya. That it's at least kosher. But in China, they like to do the opposite. Okay, they try to avoid shared components. So that's very interesting. That's why their food tastes so interesting. Okay, for us. I don't know where's Israel actually. Israel is, I think, closer to the Western Europe. Yeah. So now, when you look at this graph carefully, there's one obvious question. Look at it. Somebody sees it? What puzzles you? No. No power. At least nothing they report about it. Look at it. So this is the shared components, right? NS, 0, negative. Yeah. What is this? But it's a delta NS. And what does the delta stand for? What do they do here? You cannot know. I'll just tell you. So they randomly generated recipes. Okay? This is like, I once tried this. You ask ChatGPT to make you I did the following. I went with ChatGPT, now you can also talk to it, and I said, Mabel, I call her Mabel, I have in my fridge this and this and this, what can I cook? And then it suggests something to cook. in the end, I had to eat it alone. My mind said, no, this is terrible. I found it interesting, okay? But what they did was, they didn't ask ChatGPT, they just randomly made a recipe, okay? And so the 0 is basically their random combination, right? And delta and S is how much it is above random, okay? So North America is very much above random, and East Asia and China is below. So they are, purposefully finding things that have opposite taste, or I don't know. So that's the meaning of this graph. And here's the paper. You can get it for free on it's open access on Scientific Reports, and enjoy reading it. And so networks, I wanted to tell you, kind of revolutionized how also biologists are simplifying reactions. Okay, so you can find now pictures like this that on several levels of organization, going from biochemical reactions to protein-protein interactions to the genome, you find these illustrations of networks with links indicating what influences what. You know? So it's a very simplified way of picturing things. And also here you would have a network of yeast proteins and interactions, so you color everything similar in one color, and everything that is another kind of protein you color in red, and you study, you put the links, and then just by the structure you can learn something, right? So you can identify hubs in the signal, some important proteins, and or you can do some kind of these metabolic networks, biochemical agents and their reactions, and this way you already just by picturing the thing in a kind of a network structure, you learn a lot about what's going on. Here's another example of a network of a food chain. So you basically plot who is eating whom. Okay, so you have here this bass, some fish that, you see this link, they are eating themselves, but they also eat a lot of other stuff. So you can easily, just by plotting this, identify who is the most, who is the dominant predator in the system, and then you can do simulations. What happens when I reduce the number of these and these animals? What happens to the rest? And it's a very, very powerful tool. Easy to get the whole picture, right? You can easily grasp the whole picture, and you can study what you can simulate what happens when you cut certain links, or you reduce, take out some of the nodes. What happens to the other?
Just a theoretical question.
Yes.
When I'm trying to summarize all the examples that we have seen up now, I'm just wondering if it's just randoms, or can I find some topology which may indicate some underlying laws, some deterministic.
We'll come to this in a moment.
Oh, okay.
So let me just finish the examples, and then we come to these questions. Structure, what can I calculate in order to quantify the network, things like this. Thank you for the question. Another example here is scientific collaborations. Right? You have here in the middle the big professor, and around the PhD students or postdocs that also became maybe later professors and have their own group, right? Or Look, this guy went to high tech. This also, so they didn't do any publication afterwards, but most of them they stayed in academia and had themselves group, students and research groups. And then you can do analysis on this kind of structure, and you can ask how many of the co-authors that are on the paper actually work together. You know, sometimes you just are forced to put somebody on the paper. I don't want to corrupt you, but you will see this happening a lot in your career. So, how many of the people who are on the paper really work together? What would you guess? Just a guess.
3.
No, I mean percent. 3. 3%. 3%. Okay, so it's, this is very pessimistic. I mean, I found 43% already quite low. You know, I thought it's at least maybe 3/4, but it's less than half.
It's the first author and the last one. Come on, the rest in the middle are just there for
that's the Israeli thinking. That's why when you're somewhere in the middle, you don't even read the paper, you know? Okay, I'm in the middle, so what it doesn't count nothing. Yes. So, but you have a point. That's exactly the mindset that people have now. Another a nice application is social networks that we know. Facebook is a social network. Your WhatsApp is also a social network, or you have a social network of what? Game of Thrones, right? Let's ask. Let's make a trivia. Who is this?
One-armed guy. This is his name.
Jamie Lannister. One-armed guy. Yeah, he does this arm. Everybody knows this guy, right? Jon Snow. Jon Snow. This is his friend, right? And here, so you basically see here the size of so here the little guy is the biggest because he appeared in most of the most chapters, right? And you also know her, the Dragon Queen. And so this explains, so just the size is related to how often you saw them in Game of Thrones, and the link is how much this person interacted with another person. And this is why this one is very small. Somebody can see who. He is actually one of the tallest guys, not a mountain, but it's so who can it be when he has a strong link to her, but he is very, very small?
Ex-husband.
Yes, exactly. Actually, he is quite big, right? Khal Drogo, and but he, I think, he only made it one season, right? And then he got some infection, and what infection did he get? He was fighting and got some infection, and then never mind. So, but this is a very useful way of presenting Game of Thrones. If you don't have anything else to do. Donald Trump would cut this immediately. He said no more bullshit research. So this would be bullshit research. Only useful research. Things like this. This is a terrorist network from the 9/11 attacks, just plotting who was talking with whom, right? And then matching this to who. So the green ones, they went into the World Trade Center, and the blue ones, they hijacked the airplane that crashed in Pennsylvania. So this way, you basically, and I'm sure that the military is using these kind of algorithms to identify hidden nodes, right? That just by identifying someone who is maybe, you think is a civilian, working for UNRWA, but he has a lot of connections to Zinwar, so it had. So this is kind of suspicious, right? But I don't want to talk about politics. But this kind of things they use. to identify certain structures in social networks. And one important aspect of a social network is the small world phenomenon. So what is the small world phenomenon? It's that you small world phenomenon means that you can easily reach to anywhere. Okay, so I could basically I could try to write a letter to Bibi and deliver it not by mail because he could not open the letter, but I would be able to get it to him in over a couple of people. So I would give it to Shlomo Havlin. Shlomo Havlin knows Bennett, but Bennett is not good anymore with Bibi, so I don't know. So he would have to figure something out. But you see the point, right? You can easily get from one person to another. So let's take the example of Sarah wants to get a letter or a note to Peter, whom she doesn't know, right? And how would she do this? She could go with Ralph. Okay, she's in the same spinning class as Ralph, so she's giving him the letter, and Ralph plays ping pong with Matkot, we are in Israel. Matkot with Jane, right? So, and Jane is the neighbor of Peter, so this way Sarah can deliver a letter to Peter. And so what would you say, I mean this is some stupid example, but what would you say, how many steps in average would it take to reach anyone? Okay, you can run this with the computer many times and then make an average, and how long would it take in average to reach anyone?
7.
7 is good. It actually depends what we are looking at, right? If we are looking at, for example, Chabad, it's only 3. I mean, everybody knows it. So it's funny. But for the United States, for example, in the 60s, there was an experiment by Stanley Milgram. He found that it's 6 steps. Okay, it's also called 6 steps of separation. And what did he do? He designed an experiment and told people in the West Coast, California, to send a letter to Boston, but not by mail, by giving it to people. Okay, and everybody should, and at each step they should make a note, to whom it passed, so to say. And then some people, they knew someone in Alabama and Kentucky and Tennessee, and finally it reached Boston. And then he just looked how, in average, how long did it take them to reach Boston, and it was an average 6 steps. In the World Wide Web, it's about 19, or nowadays maybe even less, steps to reach any website. Okay? Except the dark web. Dark web is separate. Not easy to get in and get out. Yeah.
That brings me a little bit to think about random walk. Random walk is purely probabilistic, right? But
yes.
Calculation, it's not exactly the same thing, right? But can you try to identify some underlying calculation in random walk, or it's not?
But these are two different things. So calculation is basically determining the structure, and random walk is the process on the structure.
Yeah.
And there are, Shlomo Havlin did a lot of work on this. He did different kinds of diffusion on a calculation cluster, and tried to understand how fast it takes in order to reach anywhere, or what kind. I mean, do you take a random walk that is has is not random basically, but has long-range correlations or it has anti-correlations. So it's very, very interesting.
So that
research.
That may be also the approach for thinking of one cellular, like bacteria, that they follow random walk.
Yeah.
So that could be also an approach. So should be some underlying calculation involved, because they need to make some energetic consumption strategies if they want to get from one point to another point.
Yes, you're right. But there are for bacteria, you have also the nutrients play a role. What is the gradient of the nutrients? If whether you have certain, what is the competition inside? Do you have other? But it's a very good question. I think it's Hakrabian gave a talk on this once, or I remember it from the complex systems seminar that David Kessler organizes. There was a talk about what you're saying, that bacteria, how they basically move, how they spread in a medium, and they tested it on structures in a medium with a gradient and all kinds of stuff like this. It's very, very interesting, but we don't enter into this detail. But it's research, you're right. Good. So how would we now quantify networks? That's the next question. And mathematically, it is very easy. Okay. So we have a simple graph that, for example, is kind of symbolizing our food network in the lake. I mean, human and lake and other things. And you just plot now who is interacting with whom by eating. Okay, that's I said it before. It's a food network, so obviously it's eating. And then if there is any kind of interaction by eating, you put a link, right? You put a link, and then you can plot the matrix. That's called adjacency matrix or a neighborhood matrix. And then, so for example, 1 and 2 is connected, so you put a 1 in the matrix for a number 1, then you look at the link from 1 to 2 and from 2 to 1, right?
It's not supposed to be semantical if you're talking about eating, because I can eat a fish, but the fish will not eat me.
This we talk in the next step.
Okay.
About directionality. This is just interaction. Okay? It's not they are interacting.
Oh.
They are interacting. The human is eating the fish, and the fish gets eaten by the human. Okay? This is the interaction.
It's a nice interaction.
It's basically.
What is the matrix? I don't understand.
The matrix just kind of puts this graph in a mathematical object that you can easily analyze afterwards. So you just put, you plot here the number of nodes, okay? And then you look at who interacts with whom. So node 2 interacts with node 1.
Okay, so mathematically, it is you define here a metric space.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And then if you have a matrix, you can do all kinds of linear algebra with it.
Yeah, you actually define
eigenvalues, eigenvectors, stuff
yeah.
like this, yes.
You define the distance within this
also
metric
yes,
space, and you can, okay.
Can do everything. It's very, very powerful and very simple. For example, 1 is not interacting with 8, right? So there's no connection. But you're completely right. When we talk about food, then you want to have also direction, right? So 1, so basically here the arrow points into the direction of in what stomach it is ending up. Okay, so 2 is ending up in stomach of 1, right? So and then, but 1 is not ending up in the stomach of 2. So that's why you have this asymmetry, right? So you have 1 for 2 ending up in 1, but 1 not ending up in 2. Okay, so this kind of asymmetry, and what is the next step? So we have a distance of. But distance you can get from here. You see that in order to get to 8, you have to go through this.
No, distance of connection, or strength of it.
The strength of it, right? So the weight of the network. So, for example, here you have the human, and the human is eating 16 times more fish than turtles. Okay? I don't know how somebody can eat a turtle. But there's turtle soup. I once read in some book. People make turtle soup with the turtle. I mean, cooking her inside.
In China, it's very usual.
What?
In China, it's
in China they do this. Yeah. No, I don't want to say it's. Maybe it's tasty. I have no idea. But you see, this is the weight it is giving. 8 versus 0.5. Have you eaten turtle soup?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
How does it taste? Just curious.
the taste of the soup, and its meat tastes like
chicken?
No, it's more of sea. It's more like a string.
More dense?
Yeah, more dense, and it's very strange.
Very strange.
But the taste is good because it.
No, I don't tell you this. I don't want to know. Okay, so it's very tasty, but you cannot compare it to anything. If you would have said it's very tasty, it tastes like chicken, and I would say, okay, good. I eat some chicken, but no, it's. Okay, so this is the weight of the graph that you can also put inside the matrix, and then you can.
How you define the strength? I didn't understand.
The strength is just by the relative contribution, you know. So you eat 8 times more this, then you eat 16 times more this than this. You just do statistics, you know. Like before, this link strength we saw before in the Game of Thrones network. We had a very strong link between the Dragon Queen and her husband, but not so much between her and Jaime Lannister. Okay, because they didn't like so much, except for the final battle against evil.
They were the evil.
Yeah? No, but they fought together against from the north, these ice.
The White Walkers.
White Walkers, yeah. So this was actually the only connection I saw, the Dragon Queen together with Jaime Lannister. And that's why, you don't think, you don't remember this was the biggest thing of the world?
It got deleted in my head.
Ah yeah, this was the biggest fight of the whole series. So they only had one interaction in this chapter, so very small link, right? But her link with Jon Snow is very strong because they interacted for quite some time in a couple of episodes. Yes.
Beside the strength of each connection, if I'm bringing, I don't know, like neural networks or something, in biological neural networks, there's the distance of the neuron itself that also affects the connection.
Yes.
Both the distance of the neuron and the length of it, and the weight the synapse gets to reach this threshold. Like there's two kinds of weights, both both the importance of each node and the physical distance. Or
but you're talking about computational neural networks, or you talk about real you do it in a brain dish. Yes, you're right. But this is not taken into account here, the distance. So, but you can kind of simulate this with the link strength alone. I mean, you just do for
like a function of both.
Yeah, you're right. So it's here you don't have. I mean, you could maybe say that I have a strong link, but I have a kind of resistance also that my signal may be decays depending on the length. This you could do, but I don't know if they are doing this.
It's, I mean, maybe in like the World Wide Web internet connection and like sub nautical cables or something that might come in.
That you have some dumping, you mean? I think you have, and that's why they have everywhere some amplifiers inside. But I cannot say much about it. I don't know. Yes.
If I want to think about more mathematical representation of what we are doing, because we are already defined a metric space. The strength between two nearby objects, I have no idea how to. Well, the distance is well defined by the metric, but this not necessarily has to do with the strength.
No.
And so the strength.
But the distance is not. The physical distance is not so much involved here. It's more an abstract distance.
Yeah.
But the strength is simply the preferred interaction of a node. You know. So if you have two friends in Facebook, and with one you're interacting on a daily basis, then you have a stronger link to him or her than to somebody you just send a Rosh Hashanah greeting card. Okay? Then you have a weak link. It may be your best friend, but you don't interact so much with him. So that's all. It's just the statistics of traffic. It's the traffic basically. Okay? It's the traffic. Good. So, but you already asked a couple of interesting questions about structure, okay? And basically, you have all kinds of complicated network structures, but the most two important network structures are the two I'm showing you here. And the one is kind of a more lattice-like structure, right? So if you look at a road network, the nodes are the junctions and the links are the roads. You have kind of regular behavior here, right? If you go to Philadelphia as at the junction of big roads, then from Philadelphia you have maybe 4 or 5 big roads going out, right? And this is very similar also for maybe Chicago not, but Omaha or Kansas City, okay? So they are not very different from each other, right? The towns with their roads. Also historically, they had roads going out of town in each direction of north, south, east and west, basically. However, if you go to the air traffic network, where now the nodes are the airports and the links are flights between the airports, you have a completely different structure. You have big hubs like, look, this is, I think this is Chicago. This is Chicago, I cannot see it. And New York here, so some very big airports with a lot of connections, and then some small things like, I don't know, Los Angeles is relatively small, right? Los Angeles is important for the east, but doesn't have too many connections. And Portland, look, Portland, very, very few connections. And so the geometry is very different of these two, right? And what we find is that here the links are usually limited by to the neighbors. So it's also called an exponential network. Why? We will see in a moment. And here we have links on all scales. And that's why it's called also a scale-free network, okay? So there's probably some power law behind, what we will see in a minute. And I told you about the beginning of graph theory, that Euler did the first steps in the 18th century, and then nothing happened. until the 1950s. When Erdős and Ronny started to work on graph theory, they made actually big contributions to these random graphs. And very simple, they started to describe how to create a random graph. And how would you do this, basically? How would you create a random graph?
You would get some nodes and then you assign probabilities of interaction.
Yeah, but would you take the nodes, or would you maybe you take the matrix, right? Because in the matrix you just go line by line and you throw a die, and either you occupy it with a 1 or you keep it with a 0. And this way you generate a random graph. And exactly this is what they did. They took, I plot here the nodes, and so 10 nodes, it would be a 10 times 10 matrix, and then you go through the matrix and you throw a die, and if you have a 1, you put a 1 in the matrix element, and if you have everything else not a 1, then you put a 0, okay? And this way you go through your matrix, and when you finish with your matrix, you plot links for all the matrix elements that are occupied, and you end up with something like this, okay? So you get a graph with n times n minus 1 divided by 2 edges times p, okay? Why it's n times n minus 1 divided by 2? What is n times n minus 1, first of all?
It's the upper triangle of the matrix.
Yes, so n times n minus 1 is the whole matrix, so all possible links. You divide it by 2 because we are not looking into the directionality, right? So you don't care if it's in which direction. And p is simply the probability, right? Good. And when you do later an analysis and look just at the degree distribution, so you count, so this node has a degree of 1, this has a degree of 2, this one has a degree of 4, right? And you make a statistics of it, you end up with a Poisson distribution. That's why this random network is also called an exponential network, because this decays exponentially, right? Poisson distribution. What is the nice thing? What else is nice on the Poisson distribution?
Memory? Because it's memoryless or something?
Yeah, you're right.
It
because
makes sense that
nuclear decay is a Poisson distribution, yeah, you're right. But just from the mathematics, the Poisson distribution, the mean of the Poisson distribution is the same as the variance. It's very nice, handy characteristics that when you do some calculations with Poisson distributions, you can always use. So this is what was known basically in the 60s until the 2000s. Again, nobody really worked on it.
But
and yes.
Can you get other kind of distributions?
Yeah. But this was what was known until the 2000s. There were other, not much other work. Okay, some works in social science with Stanley Milgram, but he didn't really care about the network structure. He was more interested in this small world reaching to one person from one person to the other. So this was pretty much the knowledge at the beginning of the World Wide Web. Okay, World Wide Web has, as you know, a very interesting structure with these hubs. You know, looks more like the airline network than the road network, right? So, and Barabashi and Albert was Baker Albert was his PhD student. They started to work on the World Wide Web in the 2000s, or in the end of the 90s, and they said, okay, Erdős and Ronny, they did graph theory and found the Poisson distribution, so let's analyze the World Wide Web. Okay, it's a nice graph. What would we expect? A Poisson distribution. Poisson distribution, when we just go from each, they basically had a script that followed links, okay, and made the statistics. So from which domain it reached how many websites, you know. So, and they made the statistics. They would have expected a Poisson distribution, but they got a power law. Okay, they got a power law. Depending if you take incoming links or outgoing links, power law with exponent 2.1, 2.45. What have we learned about this kind of power laws?
We get one that it has mean and it has also deviation.
This doesn't have standard deviation.
It doesn't because it's
It's below 3. Doesn't have standard deviation, no variance defined, no second moment defined, but a mean. And this was a nature paper. Just taking some stupid, I mean it was some work, okay? At this time nobody knew how to navigate the World Wide Web. I didn't even have an email address at this time, so they did really pioneering work. And I mean, it's not just this, they also explained how we get this behavior, okay? So the nature paper also shows how to get this behavior. And actually you would be able to tell me this. So just to rehearse, so the degree distribution they found is not Poissonian, but follows a power law. And the number of nodes is also not constant, because we know that actually the World Wide Web is growing, right? But the internet is growing. So the network grows by adding additional nodes. And then we have learned in one of the last lectures that there are several mechanisms that produce power laws, right? And one of them was the rich gets richer, okay? I told you, if you don't have an apartment in Israel, it is very difficult for you to get an apartment if your parents are not helping you, right? But if your parents already have 3 apartments, it's very easy for them to get a 4th apartment and give it to you. So this is rich gets richer, and this plays a role here. Why? Because if you have a node that is already popular, and a new node wants to join the network, it is more likely to connect to the nodes that are popular, okay? So if you make a website, you are more likely to connect to Taylor Swift website than to my website, okay? That's an example.
why is number
Except
2
you want to have a good grade in the course. Then
why is number 2 important?
Why it's what important?
The number of nodes, that it's not constant. I mean, at each specific point, it is constant. You just look at it, you freeze time, you look at the nodes, it's constant.
Yes, but this doesn't explain how such network develops, you know?
Yeah,
Why?
but when they investigated, they didn't search the development of the network.
No, they didn't, you're right.
So,
But they explained how
so
it could
why
grow.
does-
How it could grow in this way. You're right, they looked at the static picture, but they tried to explain how it developed into such an interesting structure, and not to a random network, you know?
So if I want to initialize a random network that goes by power law, do I need to keep adding nodes, or can I just generate 1,000 nodes and just play with them? Because
No, you can also just play with them.
I can.
But you need to, how would you play with them? You play with them by making your matrix,
Yeah.
right? You make them, actually I have a slide about this, but I can tell you very briefly. You would start with a random network, like we did before, where you just do, you throw a die for connection, not connection. Then you have a random network, and now you do a rewiring.
Okay.
But you have to do your rewiring in a way that you will end up with hubs, with nodes that are largely connected. Okay, so this is like a good way of this is maybe simulating that the node has to give something some links to another node, you know, but under a certain kind of rule, you know. It's more complicated than just following this. This is much easier. this algorithm is much easier than do the rewiring. But the rewiring is also possible, you're right.
In this case,
yeah,
which is not the Poissonian case,
yes,
your metric space, but your metric will be time dependent because the n can be to grow, right? Can grow, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
but
the
this is a
metric
static picture now. Yeah.
What?
It's now it's a static picture. It's
Why it's a static picture?
this is you do all of so basically what you maybe I show you the next slide and then we discuss. So how you what they did basically. By the way, I cheated you a little bit. Nobody complained. If you compare these two distributions, how did I cheat you? To make it more a bigger contrast. This looks very different, right?
Scales.
Yeah, I plotted this on a linear, this is on a log-log, right? If I would have plotted this also on log-log, then it would decay faster, but it would be, I mean, it would it would decay like this because exponential. But it wouldn't be not such a nice contrast, right? So this, be careful when they try to cheat you in lectures. Yes, so just explain this and then we come back to your question. So what they did basically, very simply, is to take a Erdős-Rényi network, okay, and even in an Erdős-Rényi network you have some links at the beginning that are more popular, that have more links, so to say. We had this before, right? We had some links that had only one connection, but one or two links, they had 4 or 5 connections. They are more popular. By chance, they became more popular. But now when you add new nodes, you calculate this popularity for each node. So what is the popularity? The popularity is just how much is connected. Okay, Ki is large. Okay, then also the probability is large. The popularity is large, and then you connect it to. Then you have a higher chance to be friend with the new node. So look at this. This is a popular node. This is a popular node. These guys are not so popular. So when I add a new node, it's more likely to connect to these popular nodes. Okay, and this you can do now for many iterations. And your Poisson distribution. So in the beginning, the green one had a Poisson distribution. Now you add. And there were no hubs, and now you add more and more nodes that connect to the popular nodes, and then you transform this Poisson distribution into a power law. Just by you can even do the simulation and you see it very nicely. So then you end up. So in their case, they got a power law of gamma minus 3. Not really the empirical observation. Empirical was below 3, but it was already a good explanation how you get the power law. Yes, Gil, now you can ask.
Mathematically, I'm troubled because if you define here a metric, which is the connections that you want to build for this problem, so you are mathematically in a metric space, but that means that the metric is time dependent because
yes, yeah. I mean, what you are doing basically is you make your matrix bigger and bigger. So
yeah, so the space can shrink or extend.
Yes, but they didn't do this. Okay, they made the simulation. And then they stopped. So they started with a small matrix with a random matrix basically, right?
Okay.
10 cross 10. And now they start to add nodes. So they made the matrix bigger. And only when they finish, they did the analysis.
Okay.
So this is what they basically did.
Can you explain
yes.
the x and y axes, what they are? I mean.
Okay. So this is like the what we had with
the number of links and the probability.
yes.
to be
So
one
you
of these-
so you have here you have the number of links
Yes.
that you are connecting to,
Mhm.
or how rich you are. Okay,
Mhm.
number of links is like richness. So and then you have a lot of nodes that are very poor, have only 1 or 2 links. Okay,
Ah, the probability to be in that. Okay. So
these
the
are us, the poor people, and then you have the Elon Musks that have a lot of links. Okay, and it's also not plotted very well here, right? You can also criticize this, but it was 25 years ago, so who cares? But nature tried it many thousand times, and they made it. Good. So we have learned now something about scale 3, or this power law distributions for connectivity. So just to sum up these 2 structures, the one we said is like this, shows this Poisson distribution, right? And it's basically like a socialistic distribution, right? There is not much difference between the people. It's has a bell-like shape. Most nodes have the same number of links. Okay, most people have the same wealth. Okay, socialist society, not very likely to have a highly connected hub or node. And this is the road network that I showed you at the beginning is an example of this, right? However, the airline network that we looked afterwards has a completely different structure, and here we have many nodes with only a few links, right? These are the poor people, and a few hubs with a large number of links. Okay, these are the Elon Musks among the airports, like New York and Chicago and stuff, and very different structure, as you can see. If you want to read more about this, also about history, how this was evaluated, you're welcome to go to this book of Kakabashi. Now let's talk a little bit about parameters that we can determine from networks. Okay, and the first thing is very much related to this degrees of separation that we discussed in the social network of Stanley Milgram. Right? You want to know how far a certain node is from you, right? I mean, how do you get from 1 to 7, for example? You go 4 steps and pass node 3, 4, 6, or you find another path, and you can also do this from 1 to 5. So it's here the shortest is 2, but you can also go this way, right? It's much longer. And what you want to do is you calculate a characteristic path length, right? You kind of average over all the possibilities. Okay? And and you ask how far is it an average to reach any arbitrary node in your network. And now you can plot this as the function of the nodes in your network, and this is shown here. So you have here this average d, so the average distance, right, in units of, jumping from one node to another. And here you see this plotted over n, okay? And the red line is like a random network, Erdős-Rényi network, not very different from having a power law of 3, decays very quickly. And you see here that it's still pretty short. It goes with ln n, okay? ln, the number of nodes. And if we take society, where we have 10 to the power of 10 nodes, plus minus, we would have with 22 maybe, it needs 22 people to get anywhere on the world, okay? Maybe not to some people that live in the Amazon. You know, there are these isolated tribes, but in average it takes you 20 people to get everywhere. However, if you have now a this kind of Barabashi network where we got exactly 3, you remember this modeling of connecting to the most popular links, then this kind of drops dramatically. I wanted to say the real society is not a random network, of course, right, as we saw before. So this 22 would be when society was a random network, but it's not. So in order to reach anyone in the world, it's maybe not 6, but maybe it's 8 or something. Okay, it's not 20. So this just wanted to say that society is not a random network, so it doesn't follow this behavior. It is more closer to something like this, right? That Albert and Ronnie modeled and got a gamma of equal to 3. And here, the relationship between the characteristic path length and the number of nodes scales. So D scales with ln n divided by ln n. Okay, so this is for gamma equal to 3, and then you would, if society was this kind of network structure, you can see that you maybe need 10 people, right? Is it 10? Yes, maybe less. 8. Okay, 8. This is closer to what we know from experiments. However, when you go now to something like the World Wide Web, where we had a gamma, this exponent was between 2 and 3, remember? The empirical finding. Then you get even shorter. You get ln n. Okay? This is a famous paper by Shlomo Havlin and Reuven Cohen. They say basically the title of their PRL is scale-free networks are ultra small. Okay, not just small but ultra small, because it goes with ln n. And if you have just a gamma equal to 2, there's no dependence anymore. You can add more and more and more and more links. You still reach just by 3 jumps. It's about 3 or 4 jumps everywhere. Why is this? What is what?
It's not the real value. You cannot calculate the mean on stuff that are lower than the tails.
It's not the mean. It's just how much you jump. You know, this is just how many times you jump in order to reach everywhere. It's not the mean. So
it's not the mean jumps. It's the mean jumps.
Yeah, but this you can do. This is not the jumps. The jumps are not power distributed. So why is this independent here? Why when you have gamma equal to 2, it is independent of the number of nodes? How would such a network look like?
There's a hub in the middle, and there's basically everyone connects to it.
Exactly. You have not maybe only 1, but you have 2 or 3, and they connect everywhere. So there are huge hubs here, in this case for gamma equal to 2, and they rule everything. So all the traffic is going through them, and they have a very short path there.
But this is not calculation anymore.
No, it's not a typical calculation problem. No. Calculation you do more on. Calculation is interesting in this range here. As soon as you're to structures below the gamma equal to 3, not so interesting anymore, because the hubs rule everything. Not so much to learn from. Good. So this is about the characteristic path length. Another important parameter is a clustering coefficient. Okay, so it means that how many of your friends, so this is you, and these are your friends, right? And how many of your friends are also friends, I mean, maybe were friends before they knew you, like 1 and 2, right? They are also linked. And then you can calculate a clustering coefficient. these are the number of links among your neighbors. So it would be here equal to 1, right? Divided by the possible number of links. Again, why it's divided by 2? No directionality. Directionality doesn't matter. It's just the upper triangle. Who said this before? Upper triangle in the matrix. I think you said. Yes. Upper triangle in the matrix. So this is the clustering coefficient. This you can calculate for each node. The clustering coefficient, and there was some work, famous work in 10, 15 years ago that analyzed the network of actors and actresses in Hollywood, right? Who has the biggest clustering coefficient? And it turned out, surprise, surprise, it was Kevin Bacon. He's not the most famous actor, but he's the best connected, so to say, right? Maybe not, I mean, he has the highest, this network has a high clustering coefficient, and he is one of the most prominent figures. Because here, I mean, if you think about it, Kevin Bacon plays in, you know, Kevin Bacon is? So, okay, it's more my generation. So he played in many different genres. So Arnold Schwarzenegger was either in action movies or comedy, right? Bruce Willis, entirely action movies.
Christmas movies.
Who?
Die Hard.
Who was in Christmas?
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis was in the Christmas movie?
Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, but it's also more action movie. I don't know. I would say it's more action movie than Christmas. Christmas is more Hallmark. They meet on the Christmas market and they drink some, and then there's some relationship with somebody else. So this kind of falling asleep movies, right? Bruce Willis usually is not famous for this. Yeah, and then there are others that you can only find in comedies, right? But Kevin Bacon was everywhere. So he met many different people, and he also connected them, you know, by just going for coffee together. So very high clustering coefficient. In the World Wide Web, surprisingly, you have a low clustering coefficient. Okay.
In case that there is a directionality, can we identify regions that behave like attractors or something like this?
Probably you can do it. Yeah, but I'm not aware of somebody who has done it. So you can. Yeah, you could work on this. I don't know the literature so well, but I'm not aware of anyone who has done it. But interesting question. Yeah. Usually people don't take into account your directionality, but you can do it. It's still very much expanding field. A lot of things you can study and learn here. And just to give you also a bit more complete picture, we learned about two models today, right? We learned about the random graph from Erdős-Rényi and the Barabashi-Albert model. The one was giving us this exponential Poisson distribution of the degree. The degree distribution was Poisson exponential, and in the BA model it was power law. And you can just do now the simulations and also see here that for the random graph it is increasing much faster. It's with ln n, and for the Barabashi-Albert model it is less increasing less steep and more like ln divided by ln. So and the same you can do the same analysis you can do for the clustering coefficient. Here you have the clustering coefficient of the BA model, how it decays with the number nodes, right? It decays. The more nodes you have, the smaller the clustering coefficient gets, because you have more and more possibilities. And the decay so it goes with n to the power minus 0.75, and you have n to the power minus 1, so 1 divided by n for the random graph. Okay, and I'm not sure the minus 0.75 you can calculate analytically, but the n to the power minus 1 is very easy to calculate.
What is ER?
Erdős-Rényi. Okay, Erdős-Rényi is the same as random graph. Erdős-Rényi random graph is the same. Okay, right? Forgot to say it. Thanks for asking. How do we get this 1 divided by n behavior? We just put in the numbers. So if you remember, for the Erdős-Rényi, the expected number of links between a node or the ki neighbors of a node was calculated. We did this, was one of the first slides. It was the possible number of nodes divided by 2, because we don't take into account the directionality, times p, right? The probability that they are linked. So this is Li, the average Li, and the clustering coefficient we just looked at is just this Li, okay, because the number of expected number of links divided by the possible number of links, right? So this was the definition of the clustering coefficient, and then you plug in Li, right? And you see these two terms, they cancel, and what you're left with is P. And P is Poisson distribution, so it's just average K divided by N. And this way you get the clustering coefficient decays with 1 over n, right? So very easy calculation. Now someone asked before about the relationship between, I mean, isn't it kind of trivial that networks with a high clustering coefficient have a short path length, right? So when you have a high clustering coefficient, you can easily reach to everyone. This one could think about. And this was a very interesting question asked by Watts and Strogatz. Stephen Strogatz, you know, the famous mathematician. He worked a lot on synchronization and differential equations. He has a book on nonlinear dynamics, a very famous guy. So they ask this question: what is the relationship between shortest path length and clustering coefficient? And they came up with a very simple model, and called the Watts-Strogatz model. This paper, also Nature paper, cited I think 30,000 times. And they said, okay, let's start with a regular network. Okay, the regular network is just this kind of circle, and we connect neighboring and next neighboring points, right? And this regular network obviously has a high clustering coefficient, right? Because my neighbors are well connected, but also a very long path length. Because in order to go from here to here, you have to jump a lot, not very short way to reach any point in the network. And then he said, okay. Then they said, okay, now we rewire this network. We do just randomly choose, again, you take the matrix, right, and you choose to randomly rewire this. And what you see is that, so this is, here you would cut this link and you would reconnect these two. So you dramatically now reduce the shortest path length, right? Because in order to reach now from here to the other end, you can just jump here and then go this way. So you get much faster from one end of the network to another. And when you are random, then it's even faster, right, that you get from one end to the other. So by changing the randomness, basically, you can kind of modify easily your clustering coefficient and your shortest path length. So when you are, again, here in the case of regular network, you have a high clustering coefficient, but also a high shortest path length. Takes a long time to go from one end to the other. Now you increase to a random rewiring, and you dramatically reduce your shortest path length, right? Because you reach much faster from one end to the other. Your clustering coefficient is not so much affected because you only change it for 1 or 2 nodes, right? But when you continue the process, so you reach to maybe 50% rewiring, then also the clustering coefficient decays rapidly. So, and you get into this region where you have a high clustering coefficient and a quite short, a quite small shortest path length. Okay, and this is this small world network that we started to talk about before in social sciences and stuff. He modeled it basically very easily, just taking these 2 extreme cases and changing the wiring, the connections between them. And so here you end up with the random network, of course, then has a very the shortest path is very low. The number for reach everywhere is you reach very quickly, but also the clustering is very low because you destroyed the structure. But if you now calculate the degree distribution, you get again a Poissonian, right? Poissonian distribution. And yes, so this was about the relationship between shortest path length and clustering coefficient. Now, if you remember, we calculated this popularity score, right? When we did the Barabashi-Albert model, we said, okay, we look at the popularity of all the nodes, and then when I have a new node, he will connect to the most popular nodes, right? This was the Barabashi-Albert model that gave us an exponent of minus or a gamma of -3 exactly, which was not the empirical observed value, because empirically we get something below 3. So now the next question is, how can we make this better? No? I mean, how can we get closer to the empirical observed behavior? And one can say, okay, I put here an exponent alpha. Okay, so before in the regular Barabashi-Albert model, alpha is equal to 1, right? We just had before k divided by the sum over all possible connections. So Barabashi-Albert was this for alpha 1, getting the -3. This power law is scale free. Now you can say, okay, what happens when I make this smaller? Okay, I put it 0.5. So I basically make less the popularity less important. Okay, for constructing the network, and then you get something that is more exponential, right? So this is not decaying as a power law; it's more decaying as an exponential.
What do you change?
You change just the alpha here.
What is it experimentally?
It explains that you don't put so much emphasis on popularity. So it's less.
It's not less rich given.
Yes.
Okay.
It's more socialist.
Okay.
It's more socialist. Okay. More socialist, and you get the exponential behavior. And you can also make it very much capitalist. This is the worst capitalism you can imagine. So here you put very much, the rich gets richer to the extreme, and you get, also look at the structure. Here you don't have any hub, right? Socialist society, no hub. Here you have a few hubs, okay? But here, the hubs rule it all, right? This was before when we talked about why the distance, the shortest path length in the network doesn't change anymore at the gamma equal to 2 is because we have hubs that dominate everything. So this is here the case for an alpha larger than 1.5, for example.
Is it reversible in the sense that you can go and insert local singularities, and then you can move from one model to another? It's not a process that you can. It's not a continuous process in this sense. That means that you start with highly connected clusters, and you insert singularities that you disconnect.
Yes, you do some calculation.
But it's reversible?
This is actually, I want to talk about this a little bit in just a couple of more slides. You basically dissect the network, right? You want to dissect the network, and depending on how you dissect the network, it will collapse faster or less fast, basically. Yeah, right. I have 1 or 2 slides about this. It's also something that Shlomo Havlin worked a lot on how to quantify the robustness of a network, okay, to random failures and to targeted attacks in the target network. But we will talk about it in a moment, and then maybe we can discuss again what you asked. So this is a very simple way of changing the structure of the network. To give you a very brief answer, this could not really reproduce the empirical observation of 2.4 that we found, that they found in the World Wide Web. It just showed nicely the transition between exponential and ultra capitalist behavior. Right? When you change this in the preferential attachment, you just change this exponent. So, and there were a lot of follow-up papers that took more realistic considerations. So the Barabashi-Albert, so this is like shown like a flower here. So the Barabashi-Albert was just, can you see this actually? Yeah, it was just k, right? Proportionate to k. Alpha is equal to 1. And now you can do all kinds of, you think about what could explain this deviation in the empirical data from the model data, and how can I improve my model. So, and then they say, okay, maybe only in the beginning the popular nodes are very attractive, and later they are not so much attractive, right? So you kind of change this probability to A plus k, okay? And you get different kind of a power law, or you say in real networks I have also an aging effect. You know, so Yahoo, for example, was very popular 20 years ago. Today nobody talks about it anymore. And Voila was very famous 20 years ago. Today it's Ynet. In a couple of years, maybe it's, I don't know, Israel Hayom again. No. So aging plays an important role. You can change this probability just by putting here some time dependence, you know, and stuff like this was tried, and each of them has advantages and disadvantages. I don't want to go too much into detail, but now nowadays when you combine some of these ingredients, you get a better modeling of the empirically observed data. But just for you to know, if you want to know more about this, then look at the book. This is from the book from Barubashi, and he writes there a lot about this. I want to go now to what Gil asked about what happens when we do the opposite. We don't build the network, we destroy the network. It's very important for society, or for everybody who I mean, for every process that can be represented by a network. What happens when I do some perturbation on the network, right? So I take out nodes systematically. So I have here this kind of network, and I take out this node, okay? So I basically isolate. I don't quite break the network, but you know, if you want to get now from this point to this point, you cannot go anymore through this node. You have to go around. I take out this guy. I already isolate some people from the network, and if I take out also this one, I completely break the network apart, right? And this is very similar to what we discussed last week, percolation, right? So here the opposite, you have a percolation cluster, and now you start to reduce your probability and you dissect the cluster until you end up with losing the infinite cluster. If you lose the infinite cluster, you destroy the network, basically.
I think, I don't know, that if you define here a adiabatic process, you may, well, definitely there will be a different behavior if you are doing this when you insert local singularities adiabatically or non-adiabatic.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess that if you define well your adiabatic conditions, maybe you can reach a reversible process.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I also don't know. Yeah, I also, again, I don't know if somebody has done it. It sounds reasonable. The more common way of studying this is just mapping it onto a calculation problem, and then studying this phase transition, right? You start with a fully connected network, so to say, and then you take out links or nodes, and then you dissect the network until a point where it completely breaks apart, and then you have a critical point, and after this the network is completely dissected, right? And so now we learned about these two kinds of networks, Erdős-Rényi and scale-free network. So which network is more vulnerable to this kind of dissection? Which network is more vulnerable? The Erdős-Rényi, the random network, or the scale-free network?
Do we have enough knowledge to know which one, or
I imagine it's the scale-free one.
Yeah, just by what you have learned, what can you say about what is more vulnerable? Is that right?
I imagine it's the scale-free network.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of hubs, and if you break them, then there's no network.
Okay, good. Yes. Part of the answer. The question is, how do I attack? Okay. How do I attack? You are right when I do a targeted attack. Okay? When I target the hubs, then I can very easily disintegrate the scale-free network. I just kill the hubs, the network is dead, right? But if it is a random failure in the network, then it is more robust, because it's very unlikely, if you have random failures, that they will be exactly at the place of the hubs, right? So it's more resilient to random failures, but it is more vulnerable to random attacks, to targeted attacks, okay? And the random network is the opposite. The random network, if you do targeted attacks, it doesn't matter. All the people are the same, so to say. So you take out some of them, the network is still broken. But random failures affect it much more than the scale-free network. Okay, so it depends what kind of attack or failure is happening in the network. So, and this kind of robustness and sensitivity to attacks is actually a big topic of what Shlomo Havlin and his group started to study 2010, around 2010, and what they basically, so from where they got the idea to study this is again from engineers or from social science that study this kind of interdependent infrastructure. So you have not only one network, but you have many networks that are coupled to each other, right? So here you can easily see this on networks of networks where the electric power grid, which is a network, it depends on natural gas, right? Without natural gas, electric power, forget about it, and vice versa. You know, if you don't have electric power, you cannot operate the gas platforms.
So
you know?
it's directional, right?
It's directional. So this is directional because you need here power for compressors, but the natural gas powers the electric grid, and the same with the communication network and the oil, and here you have water, right? So everything is connected with everything, basically. So, and the question is now, does this make society, this is a picture of how society works, does this make society more vulnerable or less vulnerable? Okay, that's the question. And this is what they started to work on, and they got very much motivated also by what happened in Japan in 2011. I don't know, no, it was 13, right? Was it 13? Yeah, no, 11, 14th of March. I don't know if you remember this. There was a big earthquake in Japan, and no, Fukushima, yeah, Fukushima, and then a typhoon that completely wiped out Fukushima, and they had a lot of radiation there and stuff, and many people died. And if you have watched the pictures, it was horrible, right? And what you could see there is a cascading collapse of society, basically. You know, you had the typhoon hit, it destroyed the power plant, but the power plant was also the main supplier of electricity to the cellular network, so all the telephones collapsed, then you could not have any more communications between the other power plants, so this also collapsed. So it was really a cascade of failure. That's why also Boston Club called it the cascading disaster in Japan. And this very much reminded me of a paper. That this was the first paper of Havlin and Boulder in 2010, where they study this kind of collapse, cascading collapse, and they wanted to explain basically what happened in Italy in September 2003, when half of Italy completely had a blackout. They lost electricity for a couple of hours, and what they identified was that in central Italy, a power plant stopped functioning. And this power plant was so you have here on the map of Italy, you have the power plants, the map of power plants, and here in the sky, you have the communication network. So when this power plant collapsed, it took with it 3 main or 4 main communication centers. These communication centers were also responsible to synchronize with other power plants. So, for example, these 2 and this one. So these 4 stopped functioning and led these 3 power plants to stop functioning. And they had their communication hubs, and they also collapsed. So you had, and this happened very quickly. Very quickly, half of Italy was in the dark.
It could be for a war strategy.
This is what I think Putin's people are working on. The KGB is, I think, very much interested in this kind of simulation. Not only, I mean, I don't want to make the Russians bad. I think the CIA and the NSA, they are thinking the same way. But we are on YouTube, we have to be careful what we are saying. And yes, so this triggered a whole new field of research on interconnected and interdependent networks. And you have now a lot of work that studies this in all kinds of domains. We have physiology, where you can see the human body as an interconnected network, because you have organ systems and they have constant communications between each other. And if one system collapses, it can very often trigger other issues, right? So if your kidneys stop working, then also other organ systems are affected by this. And in biology, you have this in transportation, of course, when you have the railway networks, when they start working, that this influences airline networks and so on. So a whole new field of research started with this paper, basically. And we asked the question, what about vulnerability? Is it more vulnerable when many systems are connected? And the answer is yes. So when you look at this, here you have just simple structures. Maybe here's better. You have this kind, so each circle here represents a network, okay? And here they are just ordered in on a chain, right? So this network influences this and this. Here you have a kind of this, I don't know how to call this shape, a plus type structure, and here you have this F type of structure. So what they did, they ran the simulations, right, for each individual, how robust it is, like what we just looked at with this calculation theory, and what happens when you connect them, how robust is it. So you basically study P infinite, right? P infinite, and if you just do this for one network, you get this behavior, how it decays, right? And this is kind of a second order phase transition here. You see, you take out what we learned in calculation theory, right? And you get a decay like this, more continuous behavior. And now you start coupling them. Okay, you take n equal 2. I mean, you get the first amazing thing is that you just get the same equation, but with n equal 2. But what happens in your diagram is that now you get the first order phase transition. So you get to this point of collapse much earlier. Okay, because of this cascading failure, it goes much faster. And 5, you have even it goes even faster. So the answer to my question, does this interdependency of many networks in our society make it more robust or less? Is less. Okay, we are more vulnerable. We are more vulnerable by these interconnections. And one now needs to think about how to make it more robust. I mean, we have these interconnections, but what can we do in order to make it less vulnerable, right? And for this, Shlomo gets a lot of money from the military also to study this, you know, how to improve stuff. Yeah, but it's very important because imagine we are sitting without water, without electricity, or we don't get to buy food in the supermarket. Okay, very important questions. And the last thing I wanted to show you, what is pretty recent, is so far most of these interconnected network models, they are just models. You know, it's just studied theoretically in the computer. You have this chain and the plus structure and the F structure that we looked at before. But last year, Shlomo and Aviad Friedman, they worked on building the first physical interconnected network. Okay, and what they did was they took superconductors, two superconductors, right? And if you look at them separately, right, you get for the top, so you have top and bottom, and here you have the temperature, and here you have the resistance, right? And you cool them down, and you get the superconductive behavior for the two. This is not surprising. This would be the theory for separated networks, so to say. And this is when you do the experiment. Now, this is not something new. But now you couple them. Okay, you do interconnected networks, interdependent networks. You couple them by you have some heat exchange between the two superconductors, and then the theory would say, so this is the old curves here, how it would look like independently, second order phase transition is that, right? And now you combine them, okay? This is the theory. It says first order phase transition, right? First order phase. This is what the theory predicts, and then you measure this. And you really get it. I mean, this is again the separate measured, and here first order phase transition for the coupled. Amazing. First paper on interdependent networks in the lab. Very big contribution, to my opinion.
The left is the model that they use?
Yes, this is the model and this is the experiment. I was in the conference where Shlomo introduced the paper, and we got standing ovations, you know, because it's such a big contribution. It only went to nature physics because of politics, I think.
Why do you call this extended network? It's composed by two. Why do you call that a network and not just coupled superconductors?
Because the superconductors you design in a network structure, so you can design the superconductors as a Erdős-Rényi network. I don't know how Aviad did it. You can invite him and he can tell us. I don't know how he did it, but he made sure that you have Erdős-Rényi kind of structure, that you see this kind of second order phase transition. Because if it's not Erdős-Rényi and it would be a power law structure, I don't even know. I'm not the experimentalist. I don't know. But if you are interested in this, somebody can do a project and just telling us how he did it.
But it's only through the heat flow?
Yes.
Only the heat?
Only the heat, the coupling. So you have a different link in the network, in the superconductors. It's the regular link that you have, Cooper pairs or whatever it is. But between the networks, you have just heat links. Okay? I cannot tell you much more about this. I read the paper when it came out, but it was 1 year ago, and in my age, I already have forgotten it. But I remember it is a big contribution. It's also important. Good. So that's basically it for today. Just to tell you, so today we talked in general about networks and more about these structural things. So we said, okay, if there is any relationship between two nodes, we put a link, right? We didn't care much about is it justified to put a link, how do we test if this is really a significant interaction and stuff like this. And next week I want to talk a little bit about this, because when we go to physiological networks, when we want to study coupling between organ systems or signals, then we need to prove that there's really a link. It's not just, you know, you say, okay, they are the same organism, so they are linked. This is trivial. We need to prove that there's really some kind of causality or maybe correlation between the signals and synchronization. And this is what we are going to talk about next week. And next week also we will have someone, Shai, you will talk about EEG, right? Zev, you will talk about what to do with EEG data to
networks.
Hmm?
It's all about networks.
Yeah, networks. I mean, okay, yes. So maybe, yeah, then this would be next project. So you will talk about how to construct networks from signals, basically, right? This is what the project was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we talk about what should be your presentation focused on, and then the week after we already go. In 2 weeks we already go to the lab, to Shai's lab, and Shai's lab in Gondar. So that's the plan for the next 2 weeks. Good. תודה רבה, שבת שלום.